The purpose of this video is to try to explain the Harris family side of our genealogy, our ancestors, all the way back to Nathaniel Howell Sr., who is a registered Sons of the American Revolution Patriot and also a Daughters of the American Revolution Patriot. So those are the ID numbers for this particular patriot. And I'm going to use Ancestry.com to try to explain the path, starting with our grandparents, Thomas Cornelius Harris, who went by Neil, and Elouise Dell Davis, who went by Elouise. And she spelled her name a little different. So this is Mom, obviously. And so Nanny is Lillian Truett Dewberry Davis. And so that is the pathway to Nathaniel Howell. So Nanny's mother and father were Grandpa and Grandma Dewberry, which lived in Standing Rock. And so Joel Jefferson Dewberry and Elizabeth Jane Smith. So if you click on there, it should go to her real name, her full name, Elizabeth Jane Smith, and she went by Lizzie because that's how she's listed in the census a few times. And then Joel Jefferson Dewberry. So the information in Ancestry is only as good as the person that input it. And I'm constantly having to update it because I don't know, the system gets updated by someone else and then it screws up my data. So I'm trying to use all the official stuff that was submitted to the Sons of American Revolution, which should be the most accurate source. So if you look at my application for the Sons of American Revolution, then those dates and places and for marriage and birth and death and everything should be the most accurate information. And so if you find something different from Ancestry or FamilySearch.org, then it's probably inaccurate because someone went in and changed it again. So there's so many people with different accounts from different family trees and it all gets mixed up. So anyway, Elizabeth Jane Smith, or Lizzie, her parents were Thomas John Smith and Emily Emma Mallory Howell. And so her name is spelled differently throughout all the records. And her grave, I believe, has Emma, but she's Emily in more sources than anything. And I think Emma was her nickname. So I know everyone's going to be confused one day, 100 years from now, they're going to try to figure out who the heck was Ned Lynch because we got an Edward Lynch III. So all the names get switched up over time and people misspell stuff all the time. And that's makes it frustrating. And what makes it even more frustrating is that they got it better back in the old days than we do now, because I've seen Mom and Granddad's stuff all mixed up because Elouise is spelled 5 different ways, and Neil Harris was not his name. He was Cornelius. So Neil Harris is like Ned Lynch. They don't exist. So the other thing that people do when they go in here and change things is they'll change her to Emily Smith because that was her, they'll add her last name in there for her married name. And so on all the Ancestry stuff, it should be what their real name was when they were born. And then they got married. But as you can see, you'll probably see some sites that will have her married name. Okay, so Emily and Thomas J are buried right up here in outside of LaGrange, Georgia, on the way to Standing Rock, and their graves are in disrepair, and they actually need someone to spend some money, which would probably be me, to go pay and get them cleaned and fixed because they're falling apart. And they're at a church, an old Methodist church, and I think it's a black church now, but it's a Harmony Church on the road out there to West Point Lake and Standing Rock. And so their parents were Daniel Howell and Mary Oslin, if I'm saying that right. And they're actually buried out near West Point Lake as well. And they're on private property, and there's a lot of big dogs running around. And I've tried to go out there to see these graves, and I have no idea how to get onto the private property. But anyway, so what I had to do was prove that Emily Howell was the daughter of Daniel Howell and Mary Oslin, because this is where the Daughters of the American Revolution application for someone else connects up to Nathaniel Howell, who's the patriot right here. So that was the hardest thing. And so, because Emily was spelled so many different ways, she was Emily and Emma and different things, but I found one census where she was the brother of J.P. Howell, who was one of the sons of Daniel and Mary, who was in this Daughters of the American Revolution application. And they're buried real close to each other at Harmony Church. So that's how I had to prove that. I had the graves that were close by, and they were on the same census. And that's what connected up here to Daniel Howell and Mary Oslin, who had Daniel Howell, they were the son. He was the son, sorry, going backwards here, the son of Nathaniel Howell Jr., who was the son of Nathaniel Howell Sr., who's the patriot. So that's how it goes. So when you look at everything, it might get confusing, but Nathaniel Howell Sr. had Nathaniel Howell Jr., and when Nathaniel Howell Sr. died, I think Ann Howell was maybe living with Nathaniel Howell, because they had a deposition where the Creek Indians had stolen 2 of their slaves named Ned and Sam, and a shotgun. And my understanding is, because this is in Greene County where they were, in Greene County, they were having a lot of problems with the Creek Indians. And so a group of people from Greene County came over to Troup County and just scorched the Indian village. And that is the name of one of the West Point Lake parks up there, is called Burnt Village. So I don't know if they were involved in it, but they had problems with the Creek Indians nonetheless. So Elizabeth Wagnon, her parents were Daniel Wagnon and Elizabeth Mallory, and he's a patriot too. And I'm going to submit a supplemental application for this patriot. But I don't know if he's necessarily the greatest guy to ever acknowledge him as a patriot. I mean, he was a patriot, and he had some problems because he went insane and he killed his wife. So he beat her in the head. And he basically was on house arrest and declared insane, and ended up living with Nathaniel Howell Jr. And when Nathaniel Howell Jr. died, then Daniel Howell had to suck it up and take in the insane granddad who had killed his wife. I think I got that right. So that's how it flows. And then there's another patriot. There was a Colonel Oslin, who is Mary Oslin's dad. And all I got to do is link these two on another supplemental. So really there's 3 patriots in this line from this one census that connected Emily Howell to Daniel Howell and Mary Oslin. And that's the story there on that side of the family. That is just one of about 35 patriots in this huge thing. And I'll show you on family org as well. Here's our grandparents. Elouise Dell Davis goes up to Lillian Truett Dewberry, Nanny. And then she runs up to the Dewberrys, Grandma Dewberry, who's Elizabeth Jane Smith. And her parents were Thomas J. Smith and Emma Mallory Howell. And Thomas J. Smith, as we recall, was a badass Confederate. And so he needs to be honored for that. And basically, his wife, Emma, who's buried there at Harmony Church, her parents were Daniel Wagnon Howell. He was a reverend. Okay, so he's a preacher. And the preachers, he was the son of Nathaniel Howell Jr. and Elizabeth Wagnon. And of course, Elizabeth Wagnon is the daughter of Daniel Wagnon, who killed his wife. So there ended up being a preacher out of this somehow. You know, he probably knew, I'm sure, Daniel Howell, because he had to take care of his insane granddad who killed his grandmother. Okay, and he's a preacher now. That had to be tough. Okay, so anyway, Nathaniel Howell Jr. is here, and his parents were Nathaniel Howell Sr., who is the Patriot. So one Patriot, two Patriots, and then Oslin down here, who was a colonel. And his grave is actually, you can go see it over, I think, in Henry County. So that's the basics there. And then, of course, I've got this all typed out for all the evidence. If I can send this to, this is all the generations with all the different census. And I didn't send in any census data that could be confusing because sometimes they're inaccurate. And I had to check all the ages in all these census. And I only submitted, like this 1860 census had Emily Smith is Mary E. at age 3. So there was a potential error in her age and her name. So that census I didn't use. So you only use information that supports your case, you don't want to use any information that confuses your case because it's already confusing enough. So here's Thomas John Smith and Emma Mallory Howell. And here's how I listed out. It was Emma, then Emily, then Emma, then Emily, Emma, Mrs. E.M. Smith, Emma on her grave, and Emma in the family Bible. So it was confusing on her name, but I had enough sources that basically 3 sources to back up that her name was really, Emma, Emily, it was interchangeable, like Ned and Edward. So anyway, all this is just tons of notes going back. It took me hours for this one Patriot, and I found 35 Patriots for my whole entire family. So I've got hundreds of pages of documents, and now I'm burned out on all this stuff and rejuvenated since I got approved for this one. So you can see how detailed it is. So the objective is to get at least one Patriot under your belt, and then you can work on more. And the reason you work on more is to try to preserve history, which is one of the purposes of doing this, because all this stuff will be gone over time or too complicated to figure out once it gets past us. So thanks for watching, and I hope this helps.